What's going on YouTube? Today I'm going to be showing you the hydraulic e-brake install on a FoxBody. This is a 1990 FoxBody, but the same instructions should pretty much apply to any FoxBody SN95 or New Edge car. So first off, what we have here is this whole bracket unit is the bracket from like the $35 e-brake. The master cylinder that you see here is the Willwood cylinder. I ended up putting that on there because the eBay version was kind of garbage and it was the wrong size for the car. So I'll go ahead and show you that first. So this is the generic no-name brand eBay master cylinder. I ended up having to take it out because it broke. The shaft broke. It got out of line when I pulled the lever and it bent and broke off. This is also a 0.75, as you can see here, which is the bore size. So the larger you go in bore size, the harder you actually have to pull on the lever in order to get lockup. So if you go for a smaller bore size, you actually get much better lockup in your rear tires. But you have to pull the lever further for a smaller bore size. It's not so much up to preference. The bore size on there actually needs to match what you have for your rear brake calipers. If I remember correctly, the Cobra rear brake calipers are like 38 millimeters, and the proper handbrake size for a 38 millimeter bracket is 0.65. So this here is the 0.65 Willwood master cylinder. One thing that confuses a lot of people with these hydraulic e-brakes is the rear line is actually your inlet and the front line is your outlet. Folks don't really know why this is. The reason why this is because this is a master cylinder made for... Come on, cat, move. This is a master cylinder that's made for the brakes on your car, and it's made to be mounted in the front the opposite direction. So just a little tidbit of information. One thing that you're going to have to know when you get these master cylinders is you're going to have to special order this nut here, this brake line fitting. That is a 7/16 by 20. No stores sell that, so you're going to have to special order it. You may want to get yourself one or two because they're kind of hard to get a hold of, and if you mess it up, you're going to be stuck. And this nut up front is your standard size. So actually, what we have here, you see the brass nut on the bottom is basically an adapter. Okay, so to explain the reason why that brass nut is in there, if you look down there, you can see that that's that hole is concave, and so with that concave hole, that means that you're going to be using a bubble flare, which isn't really strong as your double flare or your inverted flare. So that brass nut actually goes straight down, and on top of the brass nut is a convex surface where you can put a double flared ending to your brake line. Cat, why? Why? Okay, so this here is the 3/16 by 24 brake line fitting, and if you don't use this adapter here, you're going to need the long nut, and that's the reason why I have the long version, because it goes so far down in there. If you use the standard fittings, which I have here, the brass ones are the standard size ones, and you can also see the long one there. If you use a standard size one, it won't go all the way down in the hole and it'll never seal. So you might want to just get yourself both kinds if you don't know what you're getting. You want to use the long nut if you don't have the flare adapter. You could use the short nut if you do have the flare adapter. Now back to here, if you have the JDM car, I know the brake lines are a different size. These are 3/16 lines, and that's what the Mustang has in it. But for JDM cars, I think the brake lines are a different size. So you're going to have an even more fun time finding an adapter that works for this. Now, with the $35 eBay bracket, the handle that comes with it is really just not long enough to put enough leverage to lock up your brakes, because it's really not made for that, but even though you use it for that. So I went ahead and created myself a nice long lever, and it works pretty well. Before we go outside the car, I'll just show you, in order to make this Willwood bracket work, I had to add spacers here to push the bracket back, because if the piston, if you pull back on it and it's not able to travel completely forward, your rear calipers will stay stuck and they won't release. So whatever you do when you install your e-brake, make sure that you have full piston travel, so that you can pull it back and so that it can go all the way forward once it's released. Otherwise your brakes won't unlock. Even when you do buy the brakes, you may still want to add a spacer here, because the way they come, they may not allow the piston to fully travel forward. So let's go ahead and take a look underneath the car. All right, we're going underneath the passenger side. The brake lines from the front to the rear actually run down the passenger side, and I'll show you where you can actually join and splice into those lines. So basically, the brake line runs right next to the fuel line. Don't cut your fuel line, it's much bigger than the brake line, so you won't get them confused. And pretty much you cut the line and make sure you run the correct line to the correct outlet on the e-brake. In order to run the lines, you're gonna, the best thing for you to do is to drop your exhaust down and also drop your drive shaft. It really wasn't easy dropping the drive shaft with the IRS car, because the rear end has to come down, so you just have to squeeze your arm and follow the lines up. And the lines actually go into the car right where the stock e-brake cable would have come out, and I can't actually get a good view of that. Here you can see the bolts just behind the transmission, where the e-brake handle is actually bolted directly to the transmission tunnel, with a little bit of spacers just to level it out. So no special brackets are needed or anything. You just have to drill through there. Make sure that your bolts are short enough that they don't come in contact with the drive shaft, because there's actually very little space, and you don't want to end up hitting your U-joint. You want to get yourself one of these little miniature tube cutters, because it's really going to be impossible to use a full-size tube cutter when you're underneath the passenger side cutting those lines apart. The full-size one is decent for manipulating the lines outside the car, but to get in tight spaces, you're really going to need something like this. Last little details, a little bit out of sequence, but in order to find out the length of line that you need, use a coat hanger. Run a coat hanger down there first and try to get an idea of how you're going to run it. With the FoxBody, if you're running to the passenger side location that I showed you here, which is right almost in line with the seam of the passenger door, it takes almost exactly 4 feet. So you probably want to cut yourself about 5 feet for each line and install it, and then trim it back as you need it, because you don't want to end up making the line too short and wasting your line. And that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. Shoot an email to media@premiumfuelmag.com, or just leave a comment below. See you later.